What's going on, legends? My name is Keith Allen, your motivation guy, and I'm here to discuss advanced controller settings that will get you ahead of the competition. So if you're new to the controller, guys, then some of the information we talk about may be overwhelming, so definitely check out our beginner guide to controller video first. Are you guys ready for the video? I know I am. Let's get this going. With a good portion of the Apex community being on console and even a large amount of PC players using a controller, it should be no surprise that there are high-tier controller players out there. A perfect example of this is TSM Snipedown. Okay, he has been slaying with the controller for the better part of 2 decades. The gap between controller and mouse and keyboard has never been closer than it is right now. And so with the proper settings for you guys, you can also be unstoppable on the sticks. And if you want to accelerate your growth and improve at an insanely fast rate, be sure to check out the Snipedown course on ProGuides.com, where he shows the tips and tricks that got him to the pro level he's at today. I personally love the course, and I know you guys will too. And so with that out of the way, let's get into the settings. Many settings under the gameplay and video tab are specific not only to your preference, but also to the platform you're playing Apex on. If you're on a PC, then the video tab will be full of graphical options to change. We always recommend going for higher FPS and lower graphics. This is completely up to you, but we do recommend the streaming budget to be as high as possible, as this does help reduce input lag. If you're using a console, then your options here are a lot simpler. You'll have FOV, which we always say put as high as your eyes can handle. A good example of this being useful is entering a building with an enemy in a corner. If you're on 70 FOV, you'll likely will miss them on your screen and have to look at the corner to see them. However, with 110, you're going to be able to see a lot more of the room and have a higher chance of spotting that legend in your peripheral instead of just fully committing to the corner. We see many high-level players running 90 on the low side and 110 being the max. There are ways to change your FOV to 120 on PC, however, we're not totally sure that we're going to be allowed in the future, so we don't recommend getting used to it. If you saw our beginner controller guide, then you should know that sprint view shake is an awful thing to keep on default. Swapping it to minimal means during sprinting, your gun and screen don't look like an earthquake, which helps your vision on the move. Another thing helping with vision is brightness. Apex has some dark spots on maps, and on top of that, legends can blend into the environment with certain skins. Increasing your brightness a little bit, maybe to 60%, is going to help majorly with these situations. Now that you have those simple video changes made, it's time to focus on the gameplay tab. So since you're here, we're assuming that you have a basic understanding of Apex. Newer players benefit from the interact prompt style being on default. This gives a bigger image of what you're picking up and a small description so you know what the item does. The drawback to this is occasionally, due to item locations after being dropped by someone, this can block a large part of your view. And so we like to change this to compact to ensure this rare occurrence is avoided, and also it just cleans up the HUD. If you prefer default, as some great players still do, definitely go with what feels right for you. Another setting that we find that can really help clean up your screen is the Crosshair damage feedback. By default, this will give you an X-shaped hit marker to show when shots are connecting with the enemy. And so by turning this off, you still get an audio cue for the shots hitting, and it's very helpful for visibility. So right below this on the menu, you're gonna find the next setting we're gonna talk about, damage numbers. And these really only make sense in one mode, and that's stacking. So with stacking, you get to see the total amount of damage you did to an opponent. No one wants to do math while they try to calm how much damage they just did. Alright, so moving on. Okay, so another thing that you want to take a look at after some time in game is the weapon auto cycle on empty. If this being on is good for you, then definitely keep it that way. Some players have a habit of swapping weapons slightly after it auto swaps for them. And so this causes them to pull the empty weapon back out, often costing them a fight. So test it out in-game and just see how you naturally react to this mid-fight. Auto sprint can be a useful tool for controller players. It has drawbacks that we'll mention shortly, but just know this can save you from buying new sticks or just replacing your controller every few months. Most players find themselves sprinting most, if not the entire game as is. So it just makes sense to turn this on, right? Well, not always. This will make you unable to slowly walk, which keeps your weapon on the ready and reduces the noise you make while moving. Someone walking around a corner versus someone auto sprinting around that same corner will cause the gun to shoot almost a full second slower than the walking player. So this may not be a big deal initially, but at higher levels of play, this can be a big deal. So the better you get at Apex and the more comfortable you get with your controller, the more likely you are to go for armor swaps in tense moments. This is why deathbox closing on damage should definitely be turned off. Newer players may have their lives saved by Apex just kicking them out of the deathbox, where a more experienced player would have their life saved by getting that armor swap off. Using controller-specific looting tactics during armor swaps, such as jumping right before entering the box, will keep you mobile and hard to hit. And you can also do a sprint and loop. Just make sure you aren't letting go of that left analog stick during this. It can be hard to master, but once you do these, they're both amazing armor swapping techniques. Valkyrie's addition to Apex also added the Jetpack controls. Swapping this to hold helps with wall jumps, and overall it just feels more fluid while flying. Wall jumps tend to be flashier than they are effective more times than not. However, if you already do them by habit, then this will make Valk more playable for you. Okay, so at the bottom of this gameplay tab, you will find Colorblind Settings. Now, even if you aren't colorblind, these can be useful to check out. These change not only item colors, but the reticle colors on sights. Lots of players like the Trinopia setting, as the yellow reticle pops good in dark backgrounds. Settings are often overlooked by players starting out, and even more so on controller. PC offers more customizability, but every important setting is included on both platforms. Alright, speaking of important settings, the controller tab is packed full of them. Regardless of your platform, this section will look identical. Okay, so many controller players starting out will get a basic controller with no back paddles. This is totally fine, and with the proper hand grip can be just as good as a Scuff or Battle Beaver. If on the basic controller, then the button layout is going to be something that you want to take a look at. Lots of times the default layout leaves room to be desired when it comes to aiming and just moving around fluidly. Crouch spamming, for example, is very beneficial in situations where you're being shot at. This is very hard to do on default. Using customizable or one of the other preset layouts makes this a lot easier. Customizable can be set exactly the same as the others, but we find it to be more pleasing to the eye to look at. Another reason we recommend this is because Button Puncher, Evolved, and Ninja tend to be the more popular of the layouts, but all of them seem to have one thing missing that would fully round it out. So if you're using a Scuff or something similar with paddles, you more than likely will be happy with jump and crouch in the back paddles. Most players don't mess with the stick layout. However, it doesn't mean you're weird if you do. Finding the right settings for you is important, so test anything out you find interesting. Oftentimes players find the crouch and aim buttons to be more controllable on hold. In comparison, toggle means if you touch the trigger or button once, then it will stay aimed in or crouched until it's pressed again. Toggle does have its benefits though, like if you play on a layout with crouch as the right analog stick, then holding and aiming simultaneously will be rather difficult. Toggle will allow for you to slide down a hill and completely focus your aim on the target. Alright, so now it's time to get into the fun stuff, response curve and sensitivity. So response curve is going to drastically change how your controller reacts to your precise movements on the stick. Classic is going to have that Titanfall-esque feel to it. And so if coming from another Respawn game, then this will feel quite at home for you. For veterans of shooters, we definitely like linear as the go-to choice. It picks up tiny movements that others won't, and has more of that raw input feeling. Newcomers may find it difficult to use, but detecting the smallest of adjustments in your aim could be the difference between a headshot and a miss. Sensitivity is a big discussion all on its own. With so many big streamers being on PC with mouse and keyboard, it can be tempting to try out high sensitivity on your controller. And so while this may look cooler and overall seem to help your movement, this is going to do more harm than good. Playing on 6 for your non-ADS sensitivity is going to be the highest we truly recommend. Anything above that, guys, and you're going to have a hard time not only controlling it, but seeing things on your screen as you look from left to right. So preferably, you should run a low ADS sensitivity as to get that lock-on effect when you aim down sights on someone. When it comes to controller and their aim assist, sensitivity does matter. And so when discussing high-level pro players, they often run 4-3 or 5-3 if they're not running ALCs, which we're going to discuss in a little bit. So if you are at all interested in doing sensitivity per optic, we recommend a max of 5 on your sniper scopes. This will give you good control at long range while still having the speed to look around a bit. So trying out sensitivities if the only way that you're going to find out if you like them. Just because your favorite streamer used 9.9 on something doesn't mean that it's going to be a good fit for you and your setup. So we've all seen the custom look control section, but more than likely as soon as you turned it on and saw the large amount of options, you went back to your tried and true 4-3. And that's fine, don't worry, we did it too. However, little did we know we were missing out on the final piece of the controller puzzle. We really want to break down this section for you guys as, this is what allows people to fine-tune their aim for the specific hardware. So going into a firing range and just, starting from the top with your dead zone, we always put this as low as it can go, and then test it out to see what kind of stick drift you're gonna get. Then increasing it by 1% at a time and just testing to see if the drift has been removed. And so once you get to the sweet spot, we recommend leaving it there and increasing slightly as needed. This is no replacement for a new controller if something is wrong with it, so do keep that in mind. And after that, we're looking at the outer threshold. This just means how quick your stick will read max input in any direction. It starts at 3% on default, so try that out for some time, then reduce if necessary. Now comes the time when you want to think back on the non-ALC sensitivity settings you had. Default, there are 4-3 on the class of response curve, so when we look here, we assume the default settings also mimic this. So response curve being on 8 we think of as classic. If you prefer linear, reducing to 0 up to 3 is going to feel pretty comparable. This is going to be completely by feel, so be sure to test these for some time before swapping. Below this, you're going to find yaw and pitch speed. Yaw is the horizontal speed and pitch is any vertical adjustment speed. We always put the pitch speed lower than the yaw. For ease, we like to just multiply what sensitivity we run non-ALC by 50 and have that as a starting point. Pitch speed, we try to put about 75% of the yaw. For example, if your non-ALC sense is 5.3, then respectively, we would have yaw at 250 and pitch at 170. I know this is a lot of numbers, guys, but trust me when I say this, man, getting this dialed in is going to be the difference maker for you. So when it comes to ADS sensitivity, you want to apply the same map to this. This doesn't mean that you're going to get the perfect combination of settings the first time. However, this is a great starting point for you. All of the extra turning speed and yaw settings we put at 0. Try them out, but we doubt you're going to be a big fan of the extra speed you get once maxed out. This will hurt your muscle memory and just make it hard to get used to over time. At the bottom of this section, you're going to see target and melee acquisition settings. Leaving these on is definitely the move, as this will disable aim assist or the lunge you see when meleeing. If you like these off, then be our guest, but you're going to be at a disadvantage because of that in most situations. So using these tips for setting up your ALC will get you ahead of the game and hopefully help with the headaches of fine-tuning them. So you can put in the time to fine-tune your ALC, look at 25 YouTube videos, see what everyone uses and copy them, but nothing will get you better at the game quicker than practicing it. And so if you change your sensitivity, guys, we suggest that you give it at least a week on that before changing. Your brain and body have to reprogram the muscle memory to the new settings, so something that sucks the first day may be completely negated by day 3. Don't be too quick to judge unless it's a very obvious problem with the setting for you. You're going to get used to the settings. Try to find a good combination of settings for you. It's going to be a key in becoming more consistent. And so once you have it set up how you want it, stick with it, all right? You're going to always struggle if you're always swapping sensitivities and also trying to improve at Apex. So spend time in the firing range, spend time dying and learning what you did wrong. Just because your aim was bad doesn't mean your sensitivity is bad. So be honest with yourself as to why you lost a fight and you're going to begin to improve. All right, guys, controllers are not easy to get used to, so don't get disheartened and give up, all right? Putting all these tips and tricks to use is going to take some practice, but we know you can do it. So definitely just stay tuned for more controller-specific videos coming up soon. If you guys liked the video, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and connect with me on my Instagram at Your Motivation Guy. I'm proud of you guys. Keep grinding. Don't stop. I'll see you soon.